All right, welcome back to the Nightly Sports Call. We lost a great man yesterday morning. Sam Nover died at the age of 77. He was a legendary sportscaster, also a mentor to me, a colleague, and a friend. He was a major influence in my life and in my career. I had a chance to work with him for, a little over a couple years, and he was basically a legend. He taught me so many things, and what a guy to learn from, and I really feel like that was an important part of my life, learning this industry and learning from who I think was simply the best to do it in here. I mean, there's a handful of guys that I looked up to growing up, and he was definitely one of them. Do you have any good stories about Sammy?
Well, when I think about Sam, I always just think of how confident he was. And not that he shouldn't have been. He was really a pro's pro. He really knew what he was doing. I don't really care that much for that phrase, comfortable in his own skin, but that was Sam Nover. He was a very comfortable guy, very confident in what he was doing, very good at what he was doing, and just as nice as could be. I really liked him, and I'll really miss him.
Yeah, I'll miss him too. I got to be pretty close with him at times. I was his producer for a couple years, when that's the time of my life when you're trying to put a video resume together, and at that point everyone's like, you never want to show it to Sammy because he's so critical and he's just going to tear you apart. Well, I showed it to Sam. I was like, I'm going to show it to him anyways to see what he had to say. I showed it to him, and he was like, hey, I think you're pretty good. You got to work on this and this and this, and he really helped me along, and I really appreciate that advice that he gave me. And I'm going to miss him.
Yeah, you mentioned that he retired when he was like 60 or 62, and I would get an email from him every once in a while if he liked something I wrote, or if he didn't like something I wrote and he wanted to point it out to me, and I always treasured those. That was great.
Yeah, he called me a couple years ago when the U.S. Open was here in Pittsburgh. He was like, hey, babe, could you get me some parking passes for the U.S. Open?
I didn't know you did, Sam. Very
My
good.
Sam isn't as good as some. I could tell so many stories about Sam. Some are not appropriate for television. All right, we hope that you tell us some stories tonight. Give us a call, 412-575-2600 is the number. We're going out to the phone lines right now. We're going to go out to Waylon out in Washington. What's up, Waylon?
Hi, guys. Hey, hope you guys are doing cool. Maybe a shout-out to Sam, too. I'm sure he's, I believe he's looking down on you guys. I really do. However, the defensive backs of the Steelers are not stopping the run late in the game. I don't know if it's coaching. I think it's Carnell Lake who, could cover a flag pattern better than anyone I've ever seen. But I just think that, secondaries and special teams will get you a loss. Any thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think you hit it right there. The secondary hasn't really lived up to its expectations, and neither has Artie Burns. Artie Burns can't even cover a tight end anymore. I don't know what has happened with the guy, but he has not been playing up to the level of play I think the Steelers have expected from him.
Not only a tight end, but the oldest tight end in captivity.
Yeah, how old is Gates? Like 50 now?
50, yeah. But let's not finger Carnell Lake for this. He's no longer with the club.
Yeah, I don't. Tom Bradley is a secondary coach, and I don't blame the coaches. I think that when you have one thing that bothered me, Gene, was when Phillip Rivers called out the Steelers for not making adjustments and basically saying that they're known for that. Isn't there?
Well, no, that's not exactly what he said, Richie. I happened to be in the in the Rivers press conference, and I asked that particular question. I said, did they make adjustments in the second half when it was clear they were getting burned on, these passes to Keenan Allen? He said he answered my question. He didn't call anybody out. He said, no, they didn't. They usually don't. They do what they do, and they do it very well. He was trying to compliment them, but nobody was buying it.
Yeah, and it came out when you just see the quote. I didn't realize it was your question. When you see the quote, you're thinking like, whoa, is this a coaching issue? So that's good. I'm glad you cleared it up, because even I was confused by that. But the fact that they didn't make adjustments, do you blame Butler at all? Or do you blame the fact that they have linebackers? And I think it's the most since they've been keeping StatGen or whatever, next gen stats.
Yeah. Well, it is a little hard to understand, but there's a reaction for the adjustment too. If they make an adjustment and they have a corner or a safety on Allen in the slot, now you're going to be vulnerable somewhere else. Mike Tomlin and Keith Butler, no matter what you think of them, they're in a better position than we are to figure out what to do about this. Because they didn't adjust, that's not necessarily the wrong thing. Also, this game was lost by 3 points. They didn't get beat 40-9. They led 23-7 at one point. And things went south for them in the second half. But as Phil Rivers said, he said, we got the ball to Allen, but it was very difficult, and they were contested pretty well. So if you want to second guess there, that's certainly you're right. But I'm not certain that an adjustment was the right thing to do there.
Yeah, and let's not forget they were missing Morgan Burnett. They were also missing Cam Sutton, 2 guys that would have been able to help out. Now they're down to Marcus Allen, and who else am I missing? They're just basically down to third and fourth guys that don't even dress at that point. But L.J. Fort was playing a lot, and they were down some guys. There's no excuse for giving up a 16-point lead. But if I go back to Boswell, if he makes that extra point, then all of a sudden that game's tied at the end there. That field goal would have been tied. It would have been 31-28. They would have been kicking it to tie the game because they would have never went for 2. They would have been kicking extra points. Right. So missed extra points seems to come back to hurt teams all the time. All right, let's go back out to the phone lines, and we're going to go out to Terry out in Gibsonia. What's up, Terry?
I agree with the last caller that the main concern for this game coming up is the secondary, and I'm not as concerned about losing Connor just because the offensive line is so stout, and I think especially against the Raiders they can do some damage, and we can still run against them with our backups. So I'm confident that we can still run and win the game.
Yeah, I think they can win the game, not because of the offensive line. I think they can win the game because of Ben Roethlisberger. I feel like they can get away with not having James Conner for this game. I mean, not having James Conner maybe for the next 2. But if you have Ben Roethlisberger back there and you're putting guys out wide, and I'd put him up there with the Tom Brady in trying to win games like that.
It would seem so, but Ben Roethlisberger is not playing very well right now.
No, and when he does throw over so many passes, I mean, I don't know what his record is, but it hasn't been good. So, I think they'll be fine. I kind of agree with this caller. I think they'll be okay this week with Jalen Samuels. But next week, who knows? All right, Mike out in Oakland. What's up, Mike?
Hey, my 2 favorite guys. What's going on? How you doing?
Hey, thanks for calling, buddy. I appreciate it.
Listen, a couple things. Well, I disagree with Gene and you, I guess, about how you feel about the Steelers moving forward. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, as Gene just pointed out, Ben's not playing well. The interceptions are way too many. And I noticed with him that, he starts out, he looks good. As soon as he throws the first pick, it doesn't matter what team, he just doesn't look the same. He just looks tentative. He looks his balls aren't really thrown well anymore. I just feel like, that as soon as he throws that first pick, I really get worried. And you saw, like, he couldn't do anything in the second half. I understand there were injuries, obviously, and there were some bad penalties. But I also want to bring up, I am worried about the Oakland game. I really think they might literally be very close to probably losing this game. I don't think they are well with the wide receivers. I mean, they only have Juju and Brown, Switzer's in concussion protocol. James Washington has not shown anything.
Switzer practiced today. Switzer did practice today.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been pretty reliable, but to having him as a third down receiver is not really what they envisioned. But he's definitely taken on a bigger role than I think what they brought him in here for. But bottom line is they don't play well in Oakland. I think the running game is going to struggle, and I think again if Ben's going to have to throw. And then one last thing with the defense. I mean, Oakland scored 33 points on Kansas City, and Kansas City, they don't have a great defense, but Derek Carr can throw the ball.
Yeah.
And with Burnett being hurt pretty much the whole year. I mean, that signing was a joke. He hasn't done anything. He doesn't play very much. And the way we got burned in the secondary by Rivers, I'm very worried. So I'll get your guys' thoughts.
Well, you know what? I mean, he mentioned Derek Carr. That's the one way the Steelers lose this game is that Derek Carr has a good game, I think.
I have a lot of respect for Derek Carr, but it hasn't translated to anything in Oakland. I mean, they're terrible. I'm not, I don't worry about whether they win or lose. I think they can lose, definitely. I think the Steelers are in the position that they're always in when they get to December. They can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody.
Yeah, and I think you look at these 4 games. I agree with you totally. I think they can win all 4, and I think they could lose all 4 games. I think they're going to go 2-2, but I think Baltimore's going to go 2-2, and they'll end up winning the division and getting in the playoffs that way. That's what I think. All right, I'm not saying this game's easy. I think it's going to be a relatively close game, but I think you might see the Steelers pull away and win by 10. All right, give me a call here coming up in a little bit. 412-575-2600 is the number. We've got a couple minutes left to take your phone calls. Back in a couple minutes.